Welcome everyone. In this video, we will discuss some of the previous year questions of exchange rates starting from 2012 till the recent exams, and this will be based upon the topics that we have already discussed about exchange rates. That is, we learnt about a history, we had a short history, learnt about a short history of exchange rates, the different systems of exchange rate that prevailed in previous years, and the present exchange rate systems that is being followed around the world, like the gold standard form, gold exchange form, that was a history, and to the current form of exchange rate system that we are following. And we also discussed about different exchange rate systems like fixed exchange rate system, floating exchange rate, managed floating, etc. And from that, we also discussed about several factors that affect exchange rates, what are the policy implications of these changing exchange rates and its and the measures adopted to influence these exchange rate systems, etc. We learnt about the different its implications on exports, imports, etc., and about the different policy measures like devaluation and like depreciation, appreciation, etc. And following that discussion, we also continued our discussion about real effective exchange rates, nominal effective exchange rates, etc. So on the basis of that information and information, we will discuss this previous year questions, which is most basically about the same topics that we have already learnt so far. And there are some changes that has happened, or some additional topics like the overshooting model that has been introduced in the late net exams. We will also have a short description about what those additional topics are, and we will finish our understanding about exchange rates as a whole. So the first question is from 2012 June paper 3. The question is about Bretton Woods system, and the options given are: set up a code of rules for nations to follow their conduct of international trade, set up borrowing facilities for the nation's temporary balance of payments problem, evolved over the years in several important ways, and option D, all of the above. So this is from our topic discussion on the history of exchange rate system. So this was one of the first exchange rate system, a coordinated or organized exchange rate system that prevailed in the around the world towards the beginning of these exchange rate systems. And what is Bretton Woods system? And again, we have, this is a direct options, these are direct options given here, and from on the basis of that, we can see that the answer is option D here. Answer is option D, that is all of the above. That is all of this question, all of the options given here describe exactly what a Bretton Woods system is. That is, it is a code of rules for nations to follow their conduct of international trade, and it is also a kind of borrowing facility for the nation's temporary balance of payment problems, and also it has evolved over the years in several important ways. So after the Bretton Woods agreement, so this was a much like a very coordinated exchange rate system in which different nations agreed to follow a specific rule or a specific set of international trade policies, as well as it also introduced certain borrowing facilities as well for the economies around the world for conducting their international trade. So this is one of the very direct question, again directly based upon our own discussion given over the previous videos. The answer is option D. Now the next question is from June 2013 paper 2. The question is: the exchange rate is kept the same in all parts of the market by. So how is the exchange rate kept equal among different markets? So there are different options given here: exchange arbitrage, interest arbitrage, hedging and speculation. So these are all different forms through which or different measures by which exchange rate stability is ensured in different markets. Exchange rate stability or its uniformity is maintained in different markets, and each of these are different policy measures, and from that how the equality is kept is by using the example. By the answer for this particular question is option A here, option A, that is exchange arbitrage. So let us see what these four options are before we see the answer in detail. The question is about exchange, the first option was about exchange arbitrage. What is exchange arbitrage? It is a forex arbitrage is the simultaneous purchase and sale of currency in two different markets. So an exchange rate, a person who is involved in this particular exchange rate market is involved in simultaneous purchasing of both the currencies. There will be a domestic currency and there will be an international currency, and when this purchase happens simultaneously in two different markets, so this exchange has to take place in two different places, and that is called the exchange arbitrage. And the next one was the practice of buying and selling a currency in a way that makes a profit by taking advantage of a difference in prices of currencies in relation to each other. So this is a part of exchange arbitrage as well. That means what benefit this or how this exchange arbitrage ensures the equality or uniformity of prices in different markets. How? Through the practice of buying and selling different currencies. Just like you buy a commodity and sell a commodity, a real commodity, currencies are also involved in such buying and selling practices which will make a profit. That means if you buy a currency, for example an international currency, you can sell it over the other market for a very different price. It means if the value of the money has appreciated, then definitely they can earn a profit upon this particular currency. So likewise, depending upon whether the currency has appreciated or depreciated, you can always earn a profit from that particular value by taking advantage of the differences in prices of currencies. And this is also a way in which American regulators should work with European central bankers to avoid exchange arbitrage. So the exchange is kept the same in all parts to avoid arbitrage practices. So in such a case where the speculation is not so much allowed, it is always ensured that if you have to maintain such practices are properly analyzed, then we have to this is a way in which the American regulators as well as the European regulators work with each other, so in order to avoid any such speculationary activities in the exchange rates. So that was about exchange arbitrage, which will ensure uniformity in the of exchange rates. The next question is from June 2013, paper 3. The question is, the fundamental cause for the collapse of the Bretton Woods system was. So why did the Bretton Woods system collapse after being the first initiated process or initiated or coordinated exchange rate system among in the world? The options are the liquidity problem, the adjustment problem, the confidence problem, and option D is all of the above. Again, this is a very direct question from our discussion on history of exchange rates. The answer is all of the above. Answer is option D, that is all of the above. That means there was a liquidity issue, an adjustment issue, and a confidence problem between the US and as well as the other nations, and because of that particular reason the Bretton Woods system had to be dissolved, and therefore the reason should be all of these above. The next question is from December 2013, paper 2, that is the Bretton Woods system was based on. So how was this Bretton Woods system brought up or created? Option A is gold standard, B is a flexible exchange rate standard, C is a gold exchange standard, and D none of the above. Again a very direct question directly from the history. The answer is option C, that is the Bretton Woods system was based upon a gold exchange standard. Gold exchange standard rather from the gold standard which was followed at the beginning of exchange rate systems. A gold exchange standard was followed in the Bretton Woods system. Now the next question. So this question is being repeated in December 2013 as well as in June 2014, paper 3. The question is again about Bretton Woods system. The immediate cause for the collapse of the Bretton Woods system was. There are several options given here. The expectation that the US would soon be forced to devalue the dollar, Option D, the massive flight of liquid capital from the US, and option C, the attempt by the 3 small European central bankers to convert part of their dollar holdings into gold at the Fed. Fed is the Federal Reserve, the Reserve Bank of the Central Bank of America, and option D is all of the above. And from these options, again we have a very similar discussion. We had a very similar discussion about the reasons for the collapse of the Bretton Woods system. So from that, we know the answer is option D, that is all of these are responsible for the collapse of the Bretton Woods system. Okay. So the next question is from December 2013, paper 3. The question is about the fixed exchange rate regime adjustment in the balance of payment takes place through. So how will the adjustment in the balance of payments be affected by this, by the influence of this particular fixed exchange rate systems? And there are 4 mechanisms given here, that is, the first one is changes in the price level, then we have changes in the exchange rates, and through changes in interest rate, and none of the above. So, through which of these following mechanisms will the adjustment be taking place in the balance of payments? So, before we go into the question, into the answer, we have to discuss some of the important topics, important reasons about or factors which can lead to this adjustment in balance of payments. That is contraction of money supply, that is a tight monetary policy, and expenditure reducing, that is fiscal measures, that is both contractionary monetary as well as fiscal policy, can lead to a decrease in the purchasing power of that particular commodity. So, the purchasing power is reduced because of this contractionary policy followed by the regulatory authorities, and thereby reducing the aggregate demand. So, contractionary policy immediately will lead to the aggregate demand being reduced through this fall in the purchasing power, and it is also likely to reduce the domestic prices. So, the immediate impact of this decrease in aggregate demand will be on the prices by a fall in prices. And the fall in the domestic aggregate demand and as well as that of the domestic prices reduces the demand for imports. So, because of this particular fall, so now the domestic commodities have become cheaper, because of which now our domestic commodities are favored much more than the imports, and the fall in the domestic prices is likely to increase exports. So, therefore, by decreasing imports, it is likely to increase exports, because as we know that the domestic goods are now currently more cheaper than any other foreign goods. So, because of which our commodities or domestic commodities will have much more demand even in the foreign market, because of which can lead to the increase in exports. Thus, the fall in imports and rise in exports would help correct the balance of payment disequilibrium. If the balance of payment was in disequilibrium, or if suppose the imports were greater than the exports, then this particular situation can lead to a situation where imports have been reduced and a rise in exports have been initiated, can correct the disequilibrium that has happened in the balance of payments. So, therefore, expenditure reducing policies reduce aggregate demand through higher taxes, interest rates, thereby reducing expenditure and output, and the reduction in expenditure and the output in turn reduces the domestic price level. So, in that case, such expenditure reducing policies will affect the BOP through these price levels. So, expenditure reducing policies will immediately affect the aggregate demand. Aggregate demand fall means it can directly affect the price level by bringing down the price level, because of which again the exports can increase, imports can decrease, and thus leading to the disequilibrium adjustment in the balance of payments. So, the same idea is conveyed through this particular slide, and this gives rise to the switching of expenditure from foreign goods to the domestic goods. So, people will favor domestic goods much greater than the foreign goods. Consequently, the country's imports are reduced and the balance of payment deficit is always corrected. So, accordingly, the balance of payments are always corrected because of this increase in exports and decrease in imports. And so, through this price mechanism, so this price level influencing the BOP through price level is an immediate impact of is the most important channel through which this price level can affect price level can affect the balance of payment or correcting the disequilibrium. So, in our question, we discussed about how a fixed exchange rate system. So, what is the speciality of a fixed exchange rate system? In a fixed exchange rate system, we know that the exchange rates are always fixed. So, no matter how the market forces change, the exchange rate once determined will always be in that particular value, will be following that particular value. So, the answer for our question will be the balance of payments will be affected only through changes in the price level, that was our option A. So, this price specie flow mechanism is a model developed by Scottish economist David Hume to illustrate how trade imbalances can be corrected and adjusted under the gold standard. So, in that way, how this particular under such fixed exchange rate systems, how this price changes can influence in correcting such balance of payment deficits or trade imbalances, and this particular model was developed by David Hume. He expounded his argument of the balance of trade, which he wrote to counter the mercantilist idea that a nation should strive for a positive balance of trade. So, there can be negative balance of trade or imbalances in the trade imbalances, and he wrote such a strategy as against to the mercantilist strategy who always believed in having a positive or surplus balance of payments. And in short, the increase in domestic prices due to gold inflation would discourage exports and encourage imports, thus automatically limiting the amount by which exports would exceed imports. So, this was a case that he explained, or he was trying to correct such a statement by bringing about or by discussing about the issues of trade imbalances and how changes in the price level can influence this can correct these trade imbalances as well as BOP deficits. Okay, so that was about our question, and the answer was option A, that is changes through price level, changes through price level we can affect the BOP balances. The next question is again from 2013 December paper 3. The question is, under managed floating exchange rate system, the nation's monetary authorities intervene in foreign exchange markets too. So, we know that managed floating exchange rate system is a type of exchange rate system where there will be the exchange rates will be allowed to float only up to a certain point, but it is still managed by the monetary authorities prevailing in that particular country. That means there will definitely be a band, and above or below in between which the exchange rates are allowed to float. So, under such situations, what is the role of this particular monetary authority? That is, smooth out short run fluctuations in exchange rates, smooth out long run fluctuations in exchange rates, smooth out short run and long run fluctuations in exchange rates, keep the exchange rate fixed among a group of nations. So, among these four options, what is the exact role of a monetary authority under the managed floating exchange rate system? So, we know that it is we exactly know what is managed floating exchange rate system. So, this is again a direct question. The option will be option A, that is the main issue or the main authority with the monetary authorities in that particular market is to smooth out short run fluctuations alone. In order to correct any short run fluctuations in the exchange rate alone, this particular monetary authorities have their limits too. So, option A will be the correct answer. Now, we have the same question repeated under the June 2014 paper 3. That means only differences will be in the arrangements of the options alone. The question is same. Under managed floating exchange rate system, the nation's monetary authorities intervene in foreign exchange markets too. So, the role is asked here, the same question is repeated, only the options have been changed, and in this question the answer is correct answer is in the option C. Option C, that is smooth out short run fluctuations in the exchange rate markets, option C. Now, the next question is from December 2014 paper 2. The question is, under a free exchange rate system, a deficit in nation's balance of payments account is automatically corrected by. So, it is a free, we have to understand, we just now discussed about how in a fixed exchange rate system BOP balances are corrected, and this question is about how a free exchange rate system. So, free exchange rate system is a type where the exchange rates are allowed to float as much as it can on the basis of the market forces of demand and supply. So, it is a free floating or free exchange rate system. So, the exchange rates can increase or decrease, appreciate or depreciate according to its own free will. So, on the basis of the market forces. So, how is the balance of payment or corrected here? The options given are depreciation of its currency and appreciation of its currency, domestic inflation, deflation and rise in their national income. So, we have a deficit in our BOP account. Deficit means there will be definitely increase in, there will be a higher import than there are exports. So, in that case, we have to know that this the deficit can be corrected only through depreciation of its currency. Depreciation of its currency, that is option A, depreciation. So, what is depreciation? The fall in the value of that particular currency relative to the value of its foreign currency which we are measuring it to. Right. So, what is depreciation is again a topic which we have already learnt in our previous videos. So, this depreciation also means, so this depreciation, as we know, that will always have a positive impact on the exports of that particular country and will have a negative impact on the imports of that particular country. Okay. So, depreciation will lead to increase in exports and a fall in imports, because of which the BOP deficit will be automatically corrected through this changes. And why we are discussing about depreciation and depreciation of a currency here? Because this is a free exchange rate system where the value of the currency is allowed to float according to the market situations. Okay, so the answer for this question is option A. Because it is a deficit, it will be depreciation. The answer will be option A, depreciation of its currency. Now, the next question is from December 2015. The question is, an overvalued Indian rupee in the foreign exchange market will have which one of the following consequences? We have an Indian rupee which is overvalued as compared to the foreign currency, and what will be the important consequences? So, the answers will be, the options are make imports cheaper and exports costlier. Option B, make imports costlier and exports cheaper. Option C is give protection to the domestic industry against foreign competition, and the final option is will improve the balance of payments. So, what will be the immediate consequence of any overvalued Indian rupee? So, what is the answer for this? An overvalued Indian rupee will always lead to, the answer is option 1, that is option A here. The first option is the correct one, that is it will make imports cheaper and exports costlier. Option 1 is, the answer for this question is first one, that is make imports cheaper and exports costlier. So, imports cheaper means people will demand more of foreign goods rather than the domestic goods, and because of this particular reason our exports will be costlier. So, when compared to the foreign market, our domestic goods can be costlier than compared to the foreign markets, foreign commodities, because of which the exports will become costlier and the imports will be more cheaper, because it is an overvalued Indian rupee. So, when the Indian rupee is valued at a greater value than the foreign currency, which will make imports, foreign goods more favorable. Okay, so the answer is option 1 here, that is make imports cheaper and exports costlier. The next question is from December 2015, paper 3. The question is, if there is a balance of payments deficit in a floating exchange rate system. So, suppose if there is a BOP deficit in a floating exchange rate system or a free exchange rate system, how will the BOP will be corrected? We have 4 options. The external value of the currency would tend to fall. The external value of the currency would tend to rise. The injections from the trade is greater than the withdrawals, and option D is aggregate demand is increasing. So, this is, we have to keep in mind, this is a floating exchange rate system and we have a BOP deficit. So, how will this particular change happen or this deficit be corrected? The answer will be option A, that is the external value of the currency would tend to fall. Because of this particular deficit, the external value, that means the exchange rate value of that particular currency would fall. So, this is in the next slide we have an example here, that is this is from 2011 12 where we have a very direct we have a very direct proof of how a BOP deficit can lead to an fall in the value of particular currency. As you can see, we have a deficit of this particular value, that is in 2012-13 we have a deficit of 363, and from that we can see that when you compare it to the same time period, see that is the value has fallen from 54.41 to 60.5. So this is from 2011-2013. Still this is a very important or a visible proof of how under a floating exchange rate system a BOP can lead to a deficit in BOP will affect the value of a particular currency. So because of this particular deficit, we saw an increase in we saw a fall in the rise of that particular currency or Indian rupee. This is in the case of India, Indian rupee from 54.41 to 60.5. So this is a very important proof that we can directly see from the economic survey. Okay, so that was the question, and moving on to the next question, we have the question from December 2015, paper 3. The question is about devaluation. Devaluation will improve the balance of payments deficit if the sum of elasticity of exports and imports of the devaluing currency is. So when will this particular devaluation lead to, devaluation or depreciation should have an immediate positive impact on the balance of payments by increase in exports and decrease in imports, right. So how, if such a situation has to take place or that positive response has to be taken, taken for granted if a condition is met. What is the condition? What will be the sum of elasticities of exports and imports? The options are greater than unity, less than 1, equal to 0, or is negative. So this is a very important concept called, this question is about a very important concept called the Marshall-Lerner condition that we will discuss, we have discussed about in the international economics. While we are discussing international economics, international trade, etc., we have discussed about the condition called the Marshall-Lerner condition. Even though it is not a direct topic which comes under the exchange rates, still since it is because of devaluation, etc., we have to include that, we included that question here with exchange rates as well. So the answer for this question would be the sum of elasticities of exports and imports for that particular devaluing country should be greater than unity. Only if it is greater than unity, only if the elasticities are greater than unity, then the positive impacts of devaluation can be enjoyed by that particular country. Okay, so this is about the Marshall-Lerner condition. The answer for this question will be option A, that is greater than unity. Okay, answer 1, greater than unity. Next question is from December 2015, is about real effective exchange rates, about also which we have discussed in our videos. And for a real effective exchange rate, consider the following statements and select the correct answer from the codes given below. It is about real effective exchange rates. So the codes given are, the statements given are, it refers to average value of country's currency in relation to an index of baskets of values of major countries' currencies. B, it refers to nominal ratio of a country's currency value to average value of a basket of currency. We have two statements given to explain the real effective exchange rates. We have to choose which one of these are correct. We have 4 codes given here. Only A is true, only B is true, both A and B are true. Neither A or B are true. The answer is option 1, that is the first one. The first one, that is, it refers to average value of country's currency in relation to an index of basket of values of major countries' currencies. So this is the first statement. The first statement correctly defines a real effective exchange rate, and we know that option B is wrong because it only considers it is given as, it refers to the nominal ratio of country's currency value, because we are dealing with a real effective exchange rate here, which is adjusted for inflation always. So this particular statement number B or the statement B is always wrong because it is given as nominal ratio. So the answer is only option A. Answer is option 1, that is only A. Statement A is true. The next question is from December 2015, paper 3. The question is, which among the following is or are true for real effective exchange rate of the currency of a country? So, what is real? Again, this about definition of real. The options are, it is a weighted average of the value of traded currencies, it is adjusted for the inflation rate of prices, it is not adjusted for the inflation of prices, and the final option, that is both 1 and 2 are true. So, among these, again this is a direct definition of real. So, the answer is option 4, that is both 1 and 2 are true. That is, it is a weighted average of the value of traded currencies, as well as it is the adjusted, it is the value that is adjusted for the inflation rate of prices. So, in the previous question we saw about how an option was given about the nominal ratio of prices, and then we discussed about how real effective exchange rates are always adjusted for inflation rates. So, option 1 and 2 are that is option 4 is the correct answer, that is first and second statements are right or true. Option 4. The next question is from July 2018, paper 2. The question is, which of the following would cause the rupee to depreciate against the US dollar, other things being equal? So, what is the reason? Among the different factors or reasons given here, what will lead to a depreciation, rupee depreciation against the US dollar? The options are a rise in the interest rates in India, a fall in incomes in the USA, an expected rise in the external value of rupee, and an increased flow of foreign investment into India. How will this lead to, what factors will lead to the depreciation of Indian rupee? The answer is a fall in, answer is option 2, that is a fall in incomes in the USA. A fall in incomes in USA will lead to rupee depreciation. How? See, the mechanism through which that will happen is that a fall in incomes in the USA, technically less availability of US dollars in India. That means incomes has fallen. So, there will be definitely fewer US dollars available, which means the supply of US dollars will be lesser than that of the Indian rupee. Because of the fallen incomes, there will be lower in US dollars in supply, and because of which the US dollars will be relatively lesser than the Indian rupee. And since less US dollar and more Indian rupee leads to appreciation of US dollars and the depreciation of Indian rupee. So, we know that there will be lesser US dollars in circulation, because of which the value of US dollars will appreciate, and because we have a higher Indian rupee in circulation, the value of Indian rupee will depreciate or reduce in value as against the US dollar, and that is how we can say that US dollar, the appreciation in US dollar can lead to the depreciation in Indian rupee. Okay, so the answer is option 2, a fall in incomes in USA. The next question is from NTA, July paper 2018. The question is, let elasticity of demand for exports for a certain country by EX and elasticity of demand for imports be EM. Assume that the country devalues its currency, its balance of payments will almost certainly show an improvement if EX plus EM is greater than 1, EX plus EM is lesser than 1, EX plus EM is equal to 1, EX is equal to EM is equal to 1. Again, this is about the Marshall-Lerner condition. The condition states that only if the elasticities are greater than 1, the elasticity of imports and that of exports, the sum of elasticities of exports and imports are greater than 1, will devaluation be benefited by that particular country. So, the answer is option 1 here, and the condition is Marshall-Lerner condition, option 1, that is EX plus EM should be greater than 1. The next question from June 2019, the question is, according to the Marshall-Lerner condition for the foreign exchange market to be stable, the sum of elasticities of demand for imports and the demand for exports should be the same condition, and the question is repeated here, less than 1, equal to 0, equal to 1, more than 1. The condition is, the answer is option D, that is more than 1. EX plus EM should be greater than 1, option D answer. The next question is about match the following question. We have list 1 and list 2, December 2019. The question is from. The list 1 will give you different mechanisms or concepts regarding exchange rate or different activities that are taking place in an exchange rate market. And the same we discussed about some of these in the in one of the previous year questions. And the list 2 specifies what each of these concepts mean in exchange rate systems, in different exchange rate systems. So the first one is forward exchange rate, hedging, arbitrage, specie point, price specie mechanism. We learnt about a price specie mechanism. So what is specie point? The list 2 gives us a device for covering exchange rate against the price rise of foreign currency, a contract to buy and sell foreign exchange against one another currency at some fixed rate in the future at a price agreed upon now, the movement of exchange rate between two limits set by the cost of moving gold from one country to another, and the final one in list 2 is a mechanism which makes two markets that are physically separate a single market in an economic sense. So these are the list 1 and list 2 given. We have different combinations given here as 4 points. The answer for this question will be option 1, first one, that is option 1 is A to 2, B to 1, C to 4 and D to 3. D to 3 from list 1 and list 2. We can see how these list is matched, how this list is matched. What is a forward exchange rate? Forward exchange means it is a contract used to buy and sell foreign exchange against one other currency at some fixed rate in the future at a price agreed upon now. We have discussed about, we might have heard about forwards. So in that case, forward exchange is a practice where it is again a contract where we are agreeing to buy or sell some certain exchange rates at a future price, currencies at a future price which is already agreed upon at a future date, at a future time, which is at a price which is already agreed upon, that is forward exchange. Then what is hedging? Hedging is again a device which is used to cover exchange risk against the price rise of foreign currency. Hedging is the practice when you follow, when there are fluctuations in the currency, when you expect immediate fluctuations in any currency, and that particular practice is used to cover such exchange fluctuation risks, and that is hedging. And what is arbitrage? Arbitrage is a mechanism by which two markets that are physically separate a single market in economic sense. So that is arbitrage. We discussed about exchange arbitrage in one of the previous questions. And so this is a mechanism where you are bringing together two physically separate markets. And specie point is the movement of exchange rates between two limits that is set by the cost of moving gold from one currency to another, or it is a band between which the currencies are allowed to, the value of currencies are allowed to fluctuate. So this is a very special kind of question which has been asked in 2019. So we have to note this is the kind of pattern that we can see from now onwards, that is from 2019, 2020, certain additional new topics which are related to exchange rates have been added to the question paper. So we have to keep such a change in mind. And we will see the next condition. Next question is from September 2020. The question is about, is an assertion reason question. It is about the Marshall-Lerner condition. That is, the assertion is Marshall-Lerner condition should be fulfilled for the success of devaluation. And the reason is devaluation makes exports costly and imports cheaper. So this is the assertion and reason. We have to find out which of the statements are correct, or whether both of them are wrong or any one of them is correct. So the answer for this question is option 3 here, that is the assertion is correct but the reason given is false or not correct. A is correct but R is not correct, because we know that devaluation will make exports cheaper. That means exports cheaper in the sense exports will be increased and imports will be reduced in the case of in case of devaluation, and only then, and it is through that process that this Marshall-Lerner condition also takes place, and that will also benefit the balance of payments of that particular country. So assertion is true, reason given is false. The next question is from NTA September 2020. Again, this is a very new question or new type of question that is added to this particular paper. It is about an overshooting model of exchange rate. Overshooting, again, this is one of the many types of exchange rate models which was developed by economist Rudy Dornbush. Attempts to establish what is the overshooting model. So the first option is the fact why the foreign exchange market is never in equilibrium. Second one, relationship between sticky prices and volatile exchange rates. Option 3, the fact that forward exchange rates are no good predictors of future spot rates of exchanges. No relationship between sticky prices and volatile exchange rates. So these are the 4 options given here used to describe. So we have to find out which one is the correct, which one exactly defines the overshooting model of exchange rate. The answer is option 2 here, option 2, that is, it shows the relationship between sticky prices and volatile exchange rates. We will see what an overshooting model is. That is, the overshooting model argues that the foreign exchange will temporarily overreact or overshoot or overreact to changes in monetary policy to compensate for the sticky prices of goods in the economy. So since we know that the prices of the goods are mostly sticky in a particular economy, any change in the monetary policy will immediately affect, because of the immediate change, because of some of the changes in monetary policy, the immediate impact can be seen in the exchange rate market by a temporary overreaction or overshooting. So that is the reason, that is what overshooting model actually says. So this means that why this overshooting is important, because of the presence of sticky prices in that particular economy. So this means that in the short run, the equilibrium will be reached through shifts in the financial market prices rather than through the shift in the prices of goods themselves. Because these prices are sticky in the short run, because of these goods or commodity prices being sticky in the short run, any changes in the equilibrium level will be reached only through the financial market changes and rather than through the shifts in the prices of goods themselves. Okay. So we know that gradually as the prices of goods unstick and adjust to the reality of these financial market prices, the financial market, including the foreign exchange market, also adjust to this financial reality. And so the equilibrium is gradually achieved as the prices of these commodities unstick rather than the overshooting or overreacting that happened temporarily or for a short run. So that is why we discussed about this particular question about the overshooting model, about what exactly this overshooting model represents. Okay. Now the next question, that is from September 2020. The question is, forward exchange rates are useful for those who wish to, first one, protect themselves from the risk that the exchange rate will change before a transaction is completed, gamble that a currency will rise in value, gamble that a currency will fall in the value, and exchange currencies at a point in time in the future. So what are the correct answers which represent foreign exchange rates, forward exchange rates? So we discussed about what a forward exchange rate is in the previous questions, and we will have to find about what exactly this is in a more specific manner. The options are 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 3 and option D is 1, 2, 3 and 4. All of these are answers. So the answer is again based upon what we have already discussed. The answer is option D, that is 1, 2, 3 and 4. That is, all of these statements are correct regarding the foreign exchange rates. Just understanding, given a very short understanding, given here is a very short understanding of what a forward exchange rate is, that it is the rate of exchange agreed upon now for a foreign exchange market transaction that will occur at a specified date in the future. So it is a kind of safeguarding. That means there will be, we are expecting fluctuations or increase or decrease in the value of a particular currency. So we are agreeing upon completing a transaction in a future period, and the agreement is to make such an exchange in the future at a rate agreed upon now is called a forward contract. So we might have heard about forward contracts in derivative markets, in financial markets, etc. So where it is a kind of a contract or an agreement in which we agree upon a predetermined prices, that is, and complete that transaction at a future date in a future time. Okay. The existence of a forward exchange market allows firms and individuals to shift the risk of future exchange rate changes to others. So, this insulation is what we call, risk insulation is what we call this foreign exchange rate, forward exchange rate system or contract. So, in order to insulate ourselves from these particular risk or these expected changes or fluctuations in exchange rates, we are undertaking such agreements. Now, the final question, that is from the recent exam in November 2021, November, December, the December-June cycles. The question is, when the exchange rate changes from $1 is equal to rupees 72 to $1 is equal to rupees 68, then what does that mean? The option A is rupee has depreciated, B is dollar has depreciated, C rupee has appreciated, D dollar has appreciated. And we have to choose that from the options given below, A, B, A, D, B, C and C, D. And again, it is a very direct and very simple question. The answer is B and C. Option C, that is B and C alone. B and C alone. The question is B and C alone is dollar has depreciated and the rupee, the value of rupee has appreciated. Dollar depreciated, rupee appreciated, because $1 was equal to 72 rupees and now it is only equal to 68 rupees, which means value of rupee has appreciated while that of dollar has depreciated. And that was the final question from exchange rates. And with this, we are concluding our discussion on exchange rate systems. We have discussed about in the previous videos, our classes, we have discussed about different types of exchange rate systems, the systems that are being followed around the world, etc. And from that, on the basis of that, we are concluding our discussion with the previous year questions. Thank you all.